to Sovereign Conversations with the Soul Attorney, the podcast where law, leadership, and liberation collide. I'm your host, Vanessa Locicero, lawyer, entrepreneur, energy worker, and your guide to building a business and life that's truly sovereign. Here, we challenge the status quo, outdated business rules, and explore what it really means to be sovereign in your life and work. Whether we're breaking down legal essentials, tapping into spiritual downloads and the power of intention, or we're having deep, unfiltered conversations with visionary entrepreneurs, healers, and thought leaders, every episode is designed to help you step into your power, protect what matters, and create your life on your own terms. So if you're ready to create a life and business rooted in belief, power, and purpose, take a deep breath, step into your sovereignty, because court is now in session. Oh, 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 oh. Welcome back to Sovereign Conversations with the Soul Attorney. I'm Vanessa Locicero, and today I am so excited to share today's guest as we wrap up this season of Sovereign Conversations. Today, I have an amazing woman on the show. I have Kate Perkovic with me, serial entrepreneur, 7-figure founder, and no BS business consultant for high achieving women. I know this for a fact. Kate was my own personal coach a couple of times and really transformed my mindset, my business acumen, and took my business to the next level. And I'm super excited to have her on the show today. So welcome to Sovereign Conversations, Kate. It's so nice to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. And obviously, I know the way that you do business, and I know your personality, and I know that we kind of vibe in the same way, that we're both very cut to the point, real, raw, vulnerable, direct conversation. So because a lot of the time we go on podcasts, they're very overly scripted or overly structured. And I know that neither of us are that way. So I'm actually really excited to see where we end up today.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so before we dive in, I know a lot of my listeners love to know that court is now in session. Okay. So now the court is in session and we are in, the safe place of this sovereign conversation. I want, Kate, for you to just start us off by sharing your sovereignty story. You have a really beautiful journey and it's super inspiring. And I just want to open the floor for you.
Yeah. I'm curious as a context to that, because I obviously want to make sure anything I explain today is super relevant for anyone listening. For you as the host, what does sovereignty mean to you? So I can anchor that into everything that I share.
I get that question a lot because it is this amorphous word that means a lot of different things. Yeah. And to me, sovereignty means living your most self-led life. Living a life that is so authentic to your own inner compass that everything else fades away and you feel like you become that highest expression of yourself. So that's what sovereignty means to me in this context. And obviously we're coming at it from the business angle and how we use entrepreneurship as a vehicle for that. But life informs art. So, it all matters.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. So I love that explanation. That very much ties into kind of how I guess I would traditionally explain my quote unquote story. It definitely has a lot of twists and turns, so it probably could be its own 60-minute episode, but I'm gonna distill it down because there's a couple core, I guess I would say, pivotal points. So, I'm 32, and several years ago now, it's probably about 7 years ago, I started this business, and at the time, I was a server who was waiting tables. I, previous to that, had gone to school for business. I liked the creative part of business. I liked the advertising. I liked the marketing. When they started getting to the conversations of economics, I was like, I don't want to be here. So that number side did not excite me, and the creative part did. So I remember going to school originally thinking I was going to go for business. And then I was like, this is not for me. And I was like, I just want to help people. That's really all I want to do is I just want to help people. And so I went and actually got my degree in social work. And so that became, okay, great. I'm going to go help people. This is what I'm going to do. And so I kind of went from business side, very extreme, to the other side, social work. And so I loved my time in social work. I specifically was in the sector of working with people who are experiencing domestic violence. And so there's a
Mm,
lot of very fulfilling work there. The only thing that I really could not um, unsee was the lack of funding, the lack of resources, the lack of financial, to be honest, support for the people who are on the front lines doing this work. And so
absolutely.
when I started to think about like this was going to be my career, I was going to be frankly living within traumatic type of experiences, but also there wasn't really a lot of funding to help change any of it. I felt powerless a little bit to think about that being something that I would do ongoing. And so I thought, okay, I went to school for business. That didn't work out. I went to school for social work. If this doesn't work out, what the heck am I going to do? And so I had someone close to me who said, listen, why don't you just take a breather, just make money, travel, and quote unquote find yourself. So I was like, okay, perfect. That's what I'm going to do. So
Yeah.
I had a girlfriend at the time who was working at a celebrity chef restaurant, and she said, listen, I'm the hostess. Why don't I get you a job as a server? And I had been serving in the summers and stuff like that. So I said, okay, great. And I did that, and I did just that. I made money, and I traveled, and I saw the world, and had some incredible trips. But just like many of us, once all of that wore off and I was back home, I was still left with myself, which is its own podcast, but you're always left with yourself at the end of it. And so
Yeah.
I still was like, what am I going to do? Like, this is not my purpose. And it's not to say there's
Mm,
anything wrong with serving because you can make great money doing it, but it didn't feel fulfilling. It didn't feel purpose driven for me. So I, like many people on my breaks, was scrolling Instagram, and I was just scrolling and scrolling and seeing people talk about laptop lifestyle. And I'm at this conference and I'm on this trip. And I'm like, man, that must be nice to be able to have that life. And I saw an influencer I followed at the time, and she was going to a conference. And so I was like, okay, well, if this is what she's doing to build her business, I'm going to go to the same conference. So I bought a ticket to this conference and I go to this in Toronto. And needless to say, this event completely broke my brain in the most beautiful way. I
I
was
love
raised by
those
a single.
moments.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
love those because you don't know they're coming, and then you go, oh, my life is never going to be the
Yeah.
same after
Yeah.
this. And I remember, until that point, again, being raised by a single mom, it was really the messaging of like, you need to get a degree, get a good stable job, incorporate in some capacity, find a good guy,
Yeah.
marry.
Security.
Yes, like it's the classic 5-step plan that all
Yeah.
of us who were raised by a lot of boomers were given. And that's because that's what they had, right?
No doubt.
So I was like, okay, I'm clearly not doing very well with the plan so far. And so
Yeah.
I thought, I'm going to go into this room and see who I can surround myself with. Well, fast forward, I go to this and I'm at a table, and I had known that like success was like 100K a year. If you make six figures, you are crushing, was the goal in
Right.
my
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
household.
Back then. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. With the economy the way it is
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
And then I'm around people who are like, yeah, I'm making 100K a month. And I said, excuse me, repeat that one more time. What did you say? And so I remember thinking, that exists? Like you used to
Yes.
hear about people who were quote unquote rich as like the separate section of society, and you're like,
Yeah.
there's like gates you can't get in, and it's like you are here, they're there. And so many of us believe that like that you're just, if you're not born into it, it's not possible.
It's an exclusive club. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so and it wasn't like intentional, but I think it's just again programming, society, upbringing, all of these influences. So then I go to this event and I'm thinking, oh my God, like I need to be around these people. Like if they're doing this, I need to figure out how they're doing it. So
No
at the end
doubt.
of it, if you've ever gone to an event of a conference of any kind, they usually pitch you a mastermind or some kind of offer. And so I joined that. And I remember my partner at the time, I said, should we do this? I don't know. And we had no money. We had server and bartender salaries. So it wasn't really anything crazy. But the investment I remember at the time was around $20,000 for the year. And I remember like, that is a car. There's no way
Yeah.
that we're going to be able to do this. And so bless his heart. And he was a massive support in my business. He had a condo at the time, and he said, listen, I will sell my condo and I will give you the $20,000 if you pay me back.
Whoa.
And yeah, this is a guy that I'm dating for like 6 months. And I'm thinking, there's so much coming up for me right now. Like a man's helping me. I don't want to owe
Yeah.
him money, all these things. And so I thought, okay, well, most entrepreneurs are, and kind of contrary to common belief, don't always have like a business coach fund that's sitting there ready to be invested.
No
So
doubt.
I anchored into like, okay, most people get scrappy and they find ways to get funding or loans or whatever to start their dream. And I thought, this is the same thing. I have to be unattached to where it's coming
Mhm.
from. So I joined this program. Well, fast forward, I ended up building a fitness business at the time. I worked out then a lot more than I do now. And then I was going into this fitness business, and it was really taking off. But I realized that I was really in it for the money. It wasn't necessarily fulfilling. Like I never saw myself to want to be a fitness coach. And so my coach at the time, I remember he said, "Could you have a quick call with me?" And so I said, "Yeah, of course." And we get on. He said, "What would you think about you coaching and mentoring the other people in the program? Because it seems like, you really are doing well. You've got some kind of momentum here. I'd love you to mentor other people." And so I said, "Of course." So I joined his team. And in joining his team and kind of putting my business on the back burner, he had a day where he said, "Listen, what would you think about getting into sales?" And let's keep in mind, until this point, I had only like upsold like a beer to somebody. So I don't know how to sell to save my
Yeah,
life
yeah.
when it comes to
Okay.
packages. So I
Because like
said,
you're so good at that now. Like
"Oh,
that's
I
like
love sales.
your
Love, love,
skill
love."
set. Yeah.
Yeah. But I will say, I think the reason the sales part works now and all of it works is because of the social work, not because of the business. And that's because, like,
Oh,
in social work, you got to make people talk about things they don't want to talk about. You have to get them to open up, to trust you so they
oh,
can
I feel
confide in you.
that. Oh
Right.
yeah.
Right. So, like, this all the time with your work, right? Like, you're having deep conversations. So,
Gotta peel the
this,
onion like one
yeah.
question at a time. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's not about the idea is not about, okay, well, great. How can I sell this person? It's like, how can I peel the onion? Exactly as you said. So I had no experience in sales. I'm like, but I do know social work. So I'm going to bring my social work into this. So I got on these calls and I was selling the $20,000 package that I had bought to other people now. And I started selling that and I started to love it. And as a closer, you make commissions. And so because I was great at selling, I started to see this momentum of how much I was making. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is pretty great. But again, there's money now, but I'm not fulfilled. I'm like, what the heck is this? Because we're taught that if we make more money or if we have more things or trips or whatever, that's what's going to light us up. And so I go back to the drawing board. I'm like, what am I going to do now? And I was like, I'm going to go find myself. I'm going to go to a women's conference. So I went to a women's conference
Okay.
and I go and I share this house with like 20 other women, this big house we all shared together to go to this conference. And I didn't know any of them before going to this. And so I got into the house and most of them were online businesses. And at the time I didn't have one. I was just a closer and I was just looking to create connections. So in this house, they said, hey, I'm having this issue. And I was like, well, I do sales. So because of that, like, here's the advice that I give to you. By the end of the weekend, I had people saying like, "Hey, can I like send you money? Like, can I help? Like, can I like pay you for this advice? Because like I really could use this help." I'm like, "No, no, no, I don't have a business." But I thought, do I have a business here? So I thought, okay, well, like, what's the one-on-one of a business? It's supply and demand. And so I knew that I had demand, but I had technically yet no supply. So
Yeah.
I'm like, let's triple check the demand. So I asked the women who were in that house, I said, "Hey, if I was to come up with like a 12-week curriculum to teach you guys everything I know about sales, would you want to do it? And I'll charge you $997." They're like, "Done." So overnight, I have a $10,000 influx. And I think
Yeah.
this is interesting. And so what that did is it gave me this evidence to be like, you can do this on your own. You don't have to go in these other areas. Like, trust your gut. You have evidence in front of you here that like something is working, something's in momentum. So at that point, I left the business that I was working for and I said, screw it, I'm going all in. And so from that point until 18 months later, we had hit seven figures in cash collected in the business. And I thought, oh my gosh. And when that happened, COVID happened. And so just after that, or just shortly after that, COVID started. And what's the first thing that everyone had to do during COVID? Any business was like, help me to go online, help me to serve online, get clients online. And so our business just skyrocketed during that time. And so now, fast forward, it's been 7 years. And so now we do that for all different types of businesses and help them to be able to scale.
I love that. That is such a like a full circle journey, but like
Mm,
full of so many beautiful pivots and challenges that I think a lot of listeners can resonate with. And
mm,
um, like a few things really stood out to me there, Kate. The key transitional or uh, your skill set, your transitional skill set that you were able to take from one, arena to the next. And when I think of like, how do we do something we've never done before? How do we empower ourselves? Like you stepped into that sales role, never having done sales before, but saying,
yeah.
fuck, I know how to talk, right? I know how to ask people questions. And I think when we're like putting ourselves in new situations, it's really important to go back to like, what am I good at? Actually, like, I've been talking since the day I was born. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need somebody to train, like you get training in a
Yeah.
certain way, but like if you have an innate gift or you have, those things that you're getting that evidence about. And I think that's really beautiful that you had the evidence and there was also that little like universe of like right place, right time,
For
right room,
sure.
like
For
luck, like
sure.
pre-COVID beauty, like I think it all comes together in such a really like synchronistic way. And
The hard part I would say to that is, though, I think for me, I was like, I was kind of, like, so lost at the time that I didn't feel like I needed a plan because I knew I was lost. Like, I was like, "Well, what can get worse from here?" Right? Like, I've
yeah,
never felt so lost and confused of what I'm doing with my life, so I guess I got to, like, take the next thing that happens. But I
yeah,
think for the average person, for anyone listening, even if you're not lost, what I see from my own journey, which is something I always anchor into today because I don't feel lost anymore, is like if I had tried to overstructure, being like, well, how's it all going to work out? And like, when's it going to happen? And what will the pieces look like? And what if that doesn't come together? And like, what if that doesn't lead there? Me feeling lost at the time, what it taught me was that I at the time didn't have a plan. So my hyperfixation and kind of strangling of the plan and how it had to work out and how it's going to all come together wasn't there. And so now I have just as much as the next person being like, but how's it going to work out? And like, is that the right move? And I have all that analytical brain just like anyone else now. But I anchor into the fact that like the basis of my success, and frankly, for most people, the basis of their success comes from things that they never could have fathomed. It's like when you meet the random guy on the train that you weren't supposed to take because your car decided to not work that day. And now he's
totally.
the love of your life. And it's like, but if you had
Yeah,
said, well, why am I taking the train? And like, how do I know if, if you're controlling the pieces, you're really strangling the outcome from happening. And
yeah,
so that's also something now, whether depending on the spectrum of where you are, if it's spiritual, if it's faith, if it's God, however you look at it, I really now try to be like, okay, like release control, because I recognize that my control to have it happen my way is completely undermining the ability for it to happen the way that it's supposed to and going to happen for me in the future.
absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And it's really funny. You can only And maybe it comes with time and retrospect. You can
Yeah.
gain that belief. You can, look back on your journey. And I like to think of, the pivots of a sailboat when, it's tacking. A sailboat doesn't sail in a straight line. It has to take a tack, zigzag pattern to catch the wind to get where it wants to go. And you might think you're pointing in the wrong direction, but ultimately, like, you never knew that that was the ultimate destination. But that belief in yourself, the belief in the universe's plan, God, whatever that is for you.
Mhm.
Um, that was something that even in my journey, I really leaned into like listening to that intuition and trying to
Yeah.
believe that like my deeper core had a message that was pulling me towards that purpose. And
Mhm.
like, yeah, I think aligning with that feeling and whatever position you're in, whether it is in corporate, in a transition, in a, different job or starting of a phase of your business, that out of alignment, that like things are good, but they could be better. Like,
Yeah.
how could this get better? How could my life elevate and expand even more? And being on that journey. And it sounds like and knowing you that this is a character trait. Like, you're an expander in your own self and you're always on the route for raising your vibration and expanding and making a positive impact on the world. And maybe can you think of a couple practical tips or tools or, some strategies that you might be able to share with the audience that you lean on when
Mhm.
you're feeling the external pressures that might steer you off of that sovereign path? And, how do you anchor back into your sovereignty?
It's such a good question because um I think, one of the things that it's so interesting timing that you asked that because I literally was talking about this yesterday with someone. Um One of the things that I recognize is that often for myself, and I think for many people, because I have friends that we talk about, even if it's not business, it could be personal, whatever. We all, to your point earlier, like we have this intuition, we have this like voice. And we know, like, we know what we need to do. We know if it's right. We know if it's wrong. We know if something's off. We know we have this inner knowing. But what ends up happening is we take advisory from everyone other than ourselves. And so it's like, well, what does my mom think about this? What does my partner think about this? What does my sister think about this? What's my best friend think about this?
Yeah.
And so we're constantly looking, I find, for like this outside evidence to verify that what we felt the entire time was valid in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And so what ends up happening is one of two things. You either get that validation from someone in your inner circle, and now you finally give your permission to say yes. Or what ends up happening is you go through this really long song and dance of getting all the advisory, only for it to not validate your point, for you to then say, never mind, I'm doing it the way that I wanted to do it
fuck
anyways.
it, fuck it.
Yeah. And so like the people in my circle always joke, like, you ask for all this advice, but you never take it anyways. And that's because, similar to most people, I still at times find myself falling into this practice of like trusting myself. But what I've done, one of the practices that I do, is I look to always anchor into evidence that I have of my past, and not of the situation, but of my perspective or of my feeling within it. So even, when I, was going through the situation of feeling super lost, and if I have a lot of, say, in my life, things that have changed or have kind of gone up in the air and it feels like I'm unsettled, I anchor back into, okay, like how have I trusted myself before when things have been unsettled? How have I trusted myself before when something didn't feel right? And it's not about like, what did I do in the situation? It's more of like, how did I tune into myself? And I anchor into that, because what it does is it gives me the evidence, the faith to know I'm good. Cause like I went through all of that, whatever that might be. It could be a job, it could be a relationship, it could be mental health, whatever it is. If you can go through that, even if it's not perfectly contextual to the situation you're experiencing, there are principles that have allowed you to get to where you are. So like anchor into the fact you've done it before, you can do it again, whatever that thing is. So that's one thing I would say is a massive help for me. The second thing, you mentioned pressure. What I've recognized is sometimes the pressure I feel is not mine. And a lot of the time, if you are a heart-centered person, which probably in the essence of this show you are,
Yeah.
if you're a heart-centered person, because we're empaths and like we really care and we like take on the energy of other people. And it's a beautiful thing because it allows us to serve and to scale our businesses in a really unique way because we are so tuned in. The problem being, like, even when I've had the most burnout states, what I realized was, oh my God, this is not mine. This is so-and-so who's going through a breakup and I'm feeling it. This is so-and-so who's struggling financially and I'm feeling it. This is so-and-so who shared this really intimate thing about her relationship and I'm feeling it. So when I started to remove that aspect and I said, okay, how am I? I'm like, oh, I'm good. So it really started to show me as a practice that like I have to cleanse almost my empathetic nature, because otherwise I don't just consult on things, I carry, meaning I am thinking about so-and-so's situation 2, 3, 4 days after they've shared it with me. It's not gone. It's still latched onto me. And so another practice is really when I feel the pressures of the world, I really take a practice to be in my body and say, okay, great. Is this mine? And I sometimes have actually listed out in a journal all the things that I'm stressed about. I'm stressed about so-and-so, and I'm stressed about this. And I take a highlighter. I'm like, what's mine? Like, what of all this is me and mine?
Yeah.
And oftentimes there's like 2 out of 25 things. I'm like, okay, great. And I look at that page when I start to feel stressed in the situation again. I'm like, it's not mine. It's not mine to carry. It's not mine to carry. You can still care, but carrying it is a whole other thing. And the other thing I would say with pressure, and I know that you know this very well, is we have to recognize that our energy is a choice. It's like why you'll see people who are in the most difficult circumstances in the world, meaning they have very little resources. They are, their toys are like dirt, a ball, and a bucket. And that's the thing that they're playing with. But yet they've got the secret because they're the most happy out of anybody we've ever met. And then
So
you meet
grateful.
someone.
Yeah.
Yeah. You meet somebody who's making 2 million and they're like, oh yeah, like you said, but I could be doing more. I could be achieving more.
Yeah.
And so what I also recognize is that like we have to keep in mind what we're pressured about, right? So like what I see this all the time with entrepreneurs. If you're pressured about your mortgage payment, downsize your house. Like if you're pressured about, oh, but I have to pay for this team, great, then minimize your team. Like it's realizing too that you're always in control of your energy. You're in control of the pressure in some instances. and you're in control of how you accept it. And so one of the things that I really anchor into is emotional regulation, which is like, do I, how am I going to let my state impact my day? And many of us, because we're not taught this, I will tell you guys, entrepreneurs, like Vanessa is the most in tune, hence the soul aspect, the most in tune person. And so you want to recognize, and to put it bluntly, if you're listening to this right now, you're not like most of society. Like
Straight
there's
up.
most,
Yeah.
there's
Straight
most
up.
of, yeah, there's most of society that has a certain programming, right? Which is like, if think about the motto, you woke up on the wrong side of the bed,
Yeah.
like turn over. Like it's not, you don't have to
There is
ruin your
no,
day.
yeah, your whole
Right.
fucking day is out. Yeah.
Your whole day is in the garbage because you woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Or be like, hey, I slept like crap, but I'm gonna go have a hot shower. I'm gonna make myself an amazing coffee. I'm gonna get my face in the sun. I'm gonna take a couple deep breaths and be like, today's gonna be a good day. Boom,
Yeah.
done. Like
Yeah.
it's the programming that we get of what's considered to be normal. And what I find is the pressures of the world, we're taught that they control our state. But if you start to actually self regulate and determine and decide your state versus allowing it to be an automatic operating system, people around you are going to be like, what the fuck is she on? Because you
Yeah.
just have this way of operating, way of moving that someone can't seem to put their finger on. And the difference is that you determine your day doesn't determine you. And so I would say from a
That's
practice
sovereignty.
perspective, it's
Like, that's it.
huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. Yeah.
So true. Oh, there's so many things that the world will like tell us how to be or how to live in like whatever context. I think that goes hand in hand with I think you mentioned like, operating out of fear or operate, if you're in business or you're in making a decision in life, in a relationship, whatever it is,
Mhm.
when you're in that choice point and you're feeling, the advisory committee, I love how you put it, like, versus what am I feeling led to do? And honestly, like during my journey, Kate, I felt this so deeply when I was in law school. I even tattooed a quote on my arm that says, listen to the whispers of your soul moment by moment, because they were like little whispers. And there was like, little niggles, little nudges. And for too long, I turned down the volume on the internal, inner guidance and let the advisory committee tell me how to live my life.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who are, itching for sovereignty or are in that like, oh, like, feeling like they need to break through, break free, empower themselves. There's that, feeling of lack of freedom or, giving in to other people's, expectations.
Yeah.
But as you said, like the key is your approach, your
Yeah.
response, and like being like empowered in how you choose to react to the world, I think is not just about business, but about your whole approach and, mentality.
Well, I think that the hard part of that for most people, the idea of being self-led, the idea of being like a self-advisor is it's actually not that most people don't know. Like it's the impact of what if you decide to live that way, you got to deal with,
Right.
right? Like if you decide to carve your own path, you're going to make a lot of people really fucking uncomfortable. Like you're just like, oh,
There's
like
no one
thanks.
else to blame but you.
Yeah.
Like you're the
Yeah.
last, the buck stops with you. Like,
Yeah.
all
So like
those
there's like these
things.
two phases. The first phase of really being self-led is finding the evidence, as I said, to really be able to trust yourself, to be able to say like, I am my start and my finish. It is all within me that I can do and become and navigate whatever's out there for me. Like I got me at the end of the day. It takes
Yeah.
time to get there.
Yeah, you
And
got
it does
receipts, you
take,
got evidence, you got
yes,
confidence,
you need
got
to
that.
compile evidence. Everyone's always like, well, how do you get that confident? I'm like, you don't build confidence by thinking about being confident. You go do scary shit and you're like, oh my God, it wasn't that bad. And then you start to feel
That's right.
right? Like it's like
Yeah.
you don't have the confidence to jump out of a plane because you're thinking about it. You're like you
No,
jump
no,
out and you're like
no.
that was the best. I can't wait to go again.
That's right.
That's entrepreneurship. That's what's basically happening is you're jumping out of a plane multiple times over. And then when someone's like, "Hey, I need you to jump out of a plane." You're like, "Pfft, "No problem. Sounds
Yeah.
good." Like
Yeah.
you trust yourself. But then the phase 2 is once you trust yourself, you have to be able to be okay within yourself and not feel the need, which is very difficult for most people who are empaths because they also are slash oftentimes people pleasers, whether consciously or subconsciously.
Or shadow, yeah.
Yes, you have this need to oftentimes be liked or validated or seen. And so because of that, you're like, but if I lead and charge my own path, again, going back to most societies not like you go, well, crap, I feel like I don't fit in because I feel like I have no people like me.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
you know what? Yeah, exactly. I would say to your point, and you're right. There aren't a lot of people who are like you, but the comma to that, I would say, is that that's assuming you don't find your people. And I think that that's, again, we go back to society programming. We're taught that our people are who are in proximity to us. So, like,
Mm,
who did I grow up with? My friends from college, the people I know who used to live on my block, like, whatever it
yeah.
might be, those are the people I surround myself with. What I will say is a key trait of a lot of successful people I know is they build the advisory system around them. They still have relationships with everybody else, but they recognize that they don't need to have everyone in their life understand them. They need to have the section of people that they either desire to be like or that they have similar principles or values to. They need those people to be around them, advising them. And so
Yeah.
I find the first step is trust yourself in your current ecosystem and again, flex the muscle. It's going to happen over time. But once you do that, you will be, whether you try to have boundaries or not, you will be influenced by the people around you. And so it's also a conscious choice to say, who do I surround myself with the most? Who do I take advice from? Who do I watch? They often talk about the fact that all of the things that we learn as individuals from like when we were like, like literally embryo till now are one of two things, which is you either, there's what's caught and there's what's taught. And
Mm,
so many of us focus on what we were taught. We're like, oh, but I was taught this and I was taught that. But what you don't recognize is that the other 50% of all the ways that you operate are because you're catching things from people, meaning it's not conscious. So if you ever had one of those moms who was like, we have to clean the kitchen before bed, can't wake up to a dirty kitchen, it's not something she always said, but you knew that kitchen was having to be clean before you went to bed.
that's yeah,
So
yeah.
that's because you're catching what the principle or value is versus her telling you it had to be that way.
Mm,
So what happens now when you have your own home? You're like, gotta clean the kitchen before waking up in the morning. So
yeah.
you're learning principles, whether you like it or not, or whether you're conscious of it or not. And the advisory is not just by having a support system, it's also being conscious of what kind of people are you catching beliefs from. And it's kind of
Mm,
creating an ecosystem to say anything they do, I'm going to catch good stuff from these people to help
yes.
me to grow.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Because I often have heard the phrase like you borrow belief. Like if you don't have
Yep.
your own evidence, like if you surround yourself with the right community and the right people, you can be inspired and get that borrowed belief. And
For
I
sure.
feel like I kind of leaned into that, like when I was transitioning out of being a professional and, just a lawyer, quote unquote, to jumping into the land of entrepreneurship. I
Hmm.
had to like put on a new identity, and the only way to do that was to like
Yep.
surround myself with other people who were in that identity and to
Yep.
borrow their belief. And I think the phrase if she can do it I can do it
Yeah.
is something that is so uh empowering.
But I
And
guess that a curiosity I have for you is like when you saw other people doing what you wanted to do, did you ever have a moment where you wondered, like, because she's doing it, I can't do it? Or did you instantly go to
yeah.
like, perfect, this is evidence that it's possible?
Yeah, a little bit of both, and I think the pendulum goes like this because when I was launching, there was another like lawyer doing what I wanted to do who came, like online, similar time frame as me, and ended up actually being my mentor because I was so inspired by like how seamless she made it look,
Yeah.
and so it was a little bit of fear that like, oh, because she's doing it, it's not going to work for me, and like the market's already saturated, and that kind of like
Mm,
fear language.
yeah.
But then I just thought like, no, I'm doing it my way. I'm coming at it from my lens, and it's not going to look the same because I'm not like that. I don't
Mm,
communicate that way. I don't operate that way. And so like the clients that find her and all of those things are like right for her, and the clients that find me are right for me. And I think like it uh, like you said, when you're the first one or when you're part of that first change or you're doing something differently, like I had the visualization of like being at the front of a vanguard, like there's
mm,
nobody beside you, but like
Yeah.
maybe there's like two or three, like, there's someone over there, but you're not surrounded with the people in the back because
Yep.
you're out at the front blazing
Yep.
the trail and it's lonely at the front. And I think
Hmm.
when you're trying to trust yourself and you're trying to be self-led, you have to really lean into that personal belief, that evidence that keep a like a folder, something that you collect that evidence in your mind, a mental
Yeah.
folder on your phone or something, but just to go back to keep, it's like your bank of sovereignty, juice when you need it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's you're 100% right. And they will often teach for like a lot of different really successful entrepreneurs. They'll talk about the fact that you have to plant the beliefs you want. You can't wait for them to arrive. So like, even for me, there were so many times, and even for myself, for my podcast, I was like, who am I to who's going to listen to me for an hour every week? Who cares?
Yeah.
Or being a speaker, I thought, who wants me on their stage? Like, why would someone pay me to speak? That makes no sense. And I remember there's so many times where I thought, like, I don't deserve this. And what I recognized was like, I wasn't going to know if I deserved to have it until I did it. Meaning, I wasn't going to know the feeling. I wasn't going to have the belief that I deserved to be here until it happened. And so, what I did is I literally would go and I would ask and create, to your point, that evidence. I would say to someone, hey, appreciate being on your stage and speaking. Would love if you could just share like your experience. Like, did you enjoy the process? Any reviews you have of the speaking opportunity would be great. And I would take that and exactly as you said, I have it in a folder on my phone. I have messages from clients who are like, this changed my life. I have a message from my partner who was like, here's how I feel about you. And like when I'm having one of those days and I'm just like, nothing is going my way, I go to this folder and I'm like, girl, this is who you are. This is who you are, not like what's in your head and how you're feeling in this current moment. These current beliefs is who you are. This is who you are. And so I think it's also important for us to recognize, kind of again back to the idea of like picking your state, picking your energy, picking your perspective, because you'll know that you'll have like one of those like awful days, and then you run into like a barista and they like change your day and you're like, you know what, never mind, it's gonna be a great day.
Yeah.
You can choose to have that pattern interrupt. You can give that to yourself. And that strategy, you hit the nail on the head. That strategy of having that album is actually something that a lot of really high level executive coaches teach. And that's
Mhm.
because they know the significance of those moments and having outside evidence to tell you differently.
Absolutely. Um, like I know for me that having that handy has been something that like I love to go back to. And like not for nothing, but especially as women, like when we, for those of us that go through a cycle, it's like at different phases of the month, I need a lot more like
Yeah.
support, emotional support to like
Yes.
get myself through, a rough, busy week.
Yeah.
So it can really like come in handy at different times. But I just wanted to kind of lean into wrapping up our session today, Kate, by just asking another final question in terms of if there was one big gold nugget that maybe we haven't touched on today that you would love to share with the audience that has been something that's empowered you to live this badass, big, bold, sovereign life. What would that be?
I'm like, one? I feel like I have like
I know it's
13.
so
What?
hard.
Um,
I had, a couple,
I
whatever.
know, I know. Okay, so I think I would, they're kind of interconnected. One of them for me was the fact that sometimes you have to kill off who you were to become who you're supposed to be.
Ooh, that's so
And
true. Phoenix energy. I love it.
yeah, like
Yeah.
it's there's often this like, well, I want to always keep to who I am. And I'm like, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is not
Mm,
for you to keep to who you always have been, and like that I don't want to lose sight of who I've been. But maybe who you've been is not who you're supposed to be. So maybe you're supposed to let her go. Maybe you're
yeah.
supposed to move on. And what I mean by that is like when I was in, for example, my family didn't really come from money. My mom did the best that she could to raise four kids on her own. So I knew I don't come from money. Then in middle school, I remember I got diagnosed with having a learning disability, and they were like, "She's probably not going to go to college. She's probably not going to do anything massively academic because of this situation. So I had that label on me. Then fast forward a couple years, I, was told that I had depression and anxiety. I'm like, oh, I'm an anxious person, right? So like I have to be very careful because I'm anxious, or I could
Yeah.
easily become in a downward spiral or depressive episode. So there was that. I had all these, like, I almost want you to think about like tags on you. Like I had all these labels on me. And then I was a server. And then I was like, okay, great. I'm just a server. Or I'm just, even in my business, years in, I said, I'm a server who got lucky. I was still
Yeah.
anchored into, I was a server.
I get
And what I
that.
recognized was like, the reason my business wasn't growing is because I saw myself as the girl who came from no money, who had a learning disability, who wasn't going to do anything massively impactful because of that, who had depression and anxiety that she struggled with, who was just a server. That's the identity
Yeah.
overview resume that was going on in my mind in a loop. And again, it wasn't conscious to me till years and years and years later. But what I recognized was like, if I was going to grow my business, like I wasn't server Kate anymore. Like it's been years since I've been her.
Yeah.
She's not going to do anything great. I'm like, I would probably say I have evidence to go the other way now. So with all of that, I had to realize like the reason I wasn't stepping into who I wanted to be and therefore the success that was possible for me was because I wasn't at a place where I could let go yet of the identity. And that was because to let go of her, I had to welcome the new. And that was so overwhelming and terrifying. And it kind of goes
Mm.
into this other motto that one of my mentors, George Bryant, shared with me. And I believe he said that this quote comes from Alex Sharfin, who's another incredible business mentor, which is that you don't have the business you want because you haven't become the person to run it yet. And so that line is empowering, but it's also frustrating, right? Because
Yes.
as soon as you hear
Yeah.
it, you're like, oh crap, I'm the problem.
It's
But
a
it
me
also,
thing.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
me thing. But the me thing can also, it depends on how you look at it. You can say, like, I'm the anchor of why it's not working, but also I'm the anchor of why it's not working. That means
That's
I can't,
right.
it's not anything
Yeah.
outside of me. If I fix me, I fix the business. So
Mhm.
I've seen the impact of identity. I've seen the impact of the founder's beliefs, the founder's values, the founder's story, and what that does. And
Mm.
if I could coach anyone on like what's the unlock to like the life, the business, whatever category, the relationship that you want, it's switching the identity of like, I'm not the girl who always has issues in my relationships. I am someone who's X. I'm not the person who doesn't come from money. I am the person in the pursuit of building wealth. Like you have to kill off sometimes who you were to allow yourself to have space to embrace the next person or version you
Mm.
need for the life that you want. And so many people get safe, I think, in the current identity because it's what we know. We hate being in any situation where we have to interact with something that is unfamiliar. Our brain's not wired to do that, which is why some of the practices and things that you shared are so important because this is not like a you wake up tomorrow, you feel like you can take on the world. You have to program your mind
Yes.
and I believe you had Kelly on here as well, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, like if
Yeah.
anyone's gonna unfuck your mind, it's gonna be Kelly.
It's Kelly.
It's
Yeah.
Kelly. She's amazing. And exactly the type of work that she does just that. And
Yeah.
her episode, if anyone hasn't listened to that, is what I would dive into because her practice is exactly that. It's helping you to rewire your beliefs, to change the way you think, to therefore change the way you act, to change the outcomes that you're going to get. So,
Mhm.
two quotes are you have to kill off who you knew to become who you're supposed to become.
Yeah.
And the other side being in the business bucket that you may not have the business you want because you haven't become the person to run it yet.
Mm. Okay, those are mic drop moments, Kate, and I will yeah, like leave it there because that is it's pure gold and it really like I really resonate with both of those things as you know like having Kelly on and I
Yeah.
mentioned that Phoenix energy like I'm a big Aries, April Aries, so like the fire sign I named my dog Phoenix because I'm literally like so in the belief of this we're always going through a cycle of you know death and rebirth and that's natural and we're in the seasons of life and the seasons of you know nature
Mhm.
and I think I actually believe that that's part of the journey towards sovereignty so you know letting go of the version of ourselves who is afraid to be self-led who is you know putting that power in the hands of the advisory committee.
Yes.
The journey towards sovereignty is taking your power back, putting it in your own hands, and being, self-led. And I think we truly do need to, and whatever visual you like, let go, release, cut the cords, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But it's true, because I think when we don't have evidence, we have a smaller belief system. Like I think you started off our episode today by sharing your breakthrough, how your mind just got shattered. Like, and for anyone who has never explored entrepreneurship, when you're in a 9 to 5 and you hear entrepreneurs start talking, you're like, what the fuck are they doing? Like, what's happening over there that they don't have to clock in at 9 o'clock and, deal with all that kind of BS related. So until you have that mind fuck moment where your brain is opened and you introduced to the evidence, you have that smaller identity, and it's a beautiful journey. And I think just being open to that cycle. So I'm so grateful that you kind of shared your own version of your death and rebirth, and that your sovereignty journey has been really impactful. And I know, because it's impacted me, my life, my business. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show today. Thank you to all the listeners for sticking around this season with Sovereign Conversations. As I said, this is our final episode for the season, and we'll be coming back in September hot. So thank you, Kate, again for everything today. And with that, my friends, court is now in recess. Oh, 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 oh. That's a wrap for this episode of Sovereign Conversations with the Soul Attorney. If today's conversation sparked something in you, let's keep that momentum going. Head on over to www.thesoulattorney.com to grab free resources, explore my membership community, The Cornerstone, and step even deeper into your power. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, my friends, keep leading, keep trusting, and keep building your empire on your own terms. See you soon.